Good morning, everybody. It is Monday morning, the day after Mother's Day, and it's coming at you live again. What I wanted to do today was talk to you about vocal tuning. It's one of the things that I get a lot of comments on because it's becoming more and more a part of mixing, really, of producing. Even if you don't consider yourself a producer or a mixer, tuning vocals is it's something that you really need to know how to do, in my opinion, because and I'm gonna break down three things today that I think maybe you you need to maybe brush up on. I mean, it's a skill. We've got a little time to be building some extra skills right now, right? Um, so I'm going to break it down into, I guess, three reasons why I think you should be tuning vocals, not just tuning vocals, but I think there's a better tool for tuning vocals than I've tried several of them, and I feel like this is the way to go. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so let's talk about vocal tuning. Okay, why should we be tuning vocals? Why should vocals be perfect? I mean, vocals. There's nothing worse. First of all, there's nothing worse than a badly tuned vocal, right? A vocal that keeps hitting the wrong notes, or a vocal that you can tell it's been tuned. Maybe there's a straight line, something where there's a normal human variation in the pitch, but you hear it as very straight. I think there's times to do that, but I can tell you about that a little later. But there's nothing worse than a super tuned vocal, right? But also, I think the second to that, there's nothing worse than a vocal that's distracting because it's off pitch, and that you're not listening to what the people are saying because you are listening to the way they said it or the way they sung it, and you're making judgments on that. And then there's other times where there are things that are beautifully flat or beautifully sharp. Um, so I'm gonna. So why should you be tuning vocals? Because honestly, these days, this is what people are expecting. I mean, people are expecting nearly perfect vocal performances, right? I mean, in this world of like face filters and auto tune and perfect verbs and uh, uh, writing vocals until a mix is perfect. People are expecting perfection. It's kind of what they do. Now, I'm not saying that everything should be perfect, but just know that people are listening to your mixes in the filter of were they flat, were they sharp, were they ahead or behind, or whatever like that. So, for example, if you were to listen to probably one of the best, technically the best vocalist we've had in my age, was Whitney Houston. When she first came out, she was known as like the the elite vocalist, right? But if you listen to recordings of her now that haven't been remixed or re-edited or retouched or anything like that, you'll hear that her vocal is pitchy in places. I can't remember the names of the songs, but I have heard several songs where I'm like, oh, and I never noticed that back in the '80s and the '90s, and it's because our ears are now accustomed to hearing perfection on the radio, and I'm not saying that it should be perfect all the time, but I think it should be strategically imperfect, right? And I can tell you more about that later also. But so it's what people expect. I mean, people people are now, they've moved the bar up when it comes to vocal performances, right? Um, and now what we consider to be perfect vocals from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is now like this has not been tuned, right? By the way, you don't want people saying, who tuned your vocals? Because it means you either are normally not good at all, or they can hear they hear the correction of the vocals, and it's kind of an underground way of saying like you should maybe choose somebody else, or hopefully, I mean, in the best case scenario, nobody's going to say who tuned your vocal, because they're just going to be listening to the performance, the way the person emoted the song, their performance of the song, and they will have felt something, and the last thing on their mind is going to be vocal tuning. So There's a dark art of tuning vocals. By the way, let me stop real quick and say good morning to get some guys. Mark Jacoby, it's good to have you here, man. I don't have any coffee. We were talking about that before we before we went live. I've had one cup of coffee this morning. It was at like 5:30 or 6, so it doesn't even count now. It's like my allotment will probably start back after this broadcast. Good morning, Steve. And hey, listen, if you guys have questions about what I'm talking about, type them in the comments, and then I'm going to answer some questions later. But I wanted to kind of get this while it's fresh on my mind, get this stuff kind of out there. Okay. So number one, why should you tune vocals? Because people's ears have changed over the last few years. People notice when somebody's just 10 cents flat or 10 cents sharp. Or they also notice when somebody should have vibrato, but they don't anymore because they were tuned, right? So tuning is very important. Number one is what they expect. Number two, I think it's better bang for the buck than even the best microphones. Because if you had to choose between, now luckily we don't, but if you had to choose between a vintage U48 microphone that Frank Sinatra sang on back in the 50s, run through a Neve mic pre, run through the best signal processing, it's going to be great. It really is. But if you had to choose that over whether you could tune a note or not, or whether you went back over and over and over and over performance until they got the pitch right, and you skipped over the feel of it and the emotion that was coming from that performance, but you went over it because it was flat, then that microphone is not going to sound. Nobody's going to notice how great the vocal sound was, at least in my opinion. Nobody's going to notice how great the vocal sound was if the vocal performance is wrong, or it's not tweaked up, or if it's not perfected, but improved. So I had a guy several years ago. He was an assistant of mine, and he was investing in and whether he made the better investment or I did has yet to be determined. I'm sure that his gear that he bought is still worth a lot of money, but he was investing a lot in microphones, mic pre's, monitors, all that, and all this stuff is important. I'm not discounting this stuff at all, but he was not investing in Pro Tools or Digital Performer or some kind of digital audio workstation. And I told him something, and I can't remember exactly what I said, but and maybe I was just justifying my purchases over his purchases. When you buy Pro Tools or any kind of DAW that you can edit vocals in, which leads you to plugins that will allow you to tune people's vocals, you're investing in something that loses value over time. It's a bad ROI as far as financially. And he was buying Neve mic pre's, Telefunken microphones and things like that. He had a lot more money invested in microphones than I had in Pro Tools. But what I told him at the end of the day was like, at the end of the day, nobody's going to comment over how good their vocal sounded if it's out of time and out of tune. And it was just a passing statement to me, but to me that still makes sense. People don't connect with tone as much as they do connect with performance and feel. And a lot of times you get that feel when you put people at ease in the studio and you just let them sing. And sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes a pop happens. Sometimes they sing it out of tune. And you leave it and you try to fix it later. And sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes you leave it strategically imperfect, right? That's what I'm saying. Nobody's going to comment on, well, I say nobody, and that's, you never say never, right? More people are going to comment over what they felt from either being in your studio and singing, or what they felt when they heard a vocal rather than the tone of the vocal, right? Because a lot of times what we do is we get these big, robust, tubey sounding, big, warm microphones. And the first thing we do to make it sit in the mix is put it through a filter, right? We carve off all that low end so that we can make more room for the drums, depending on the song. If you got a big drummy song and you were trying to get a vocal to cut through, the first thing I do is filter it out. So you just filtered out $10,000 worth of microphone, right? You could have had the same vocal sound through an SM57 or an SM7 or any off the shelf tube mic. You could have gotten that pretty much same tone from. But what they remember is the way they felt in the studio when they sang it, the way you reacted to it, which is another lesson, and the way that that the vocal performance was, right? Whether they conveyed that message of feeling. And sometimes feeling is not paired with perfect performance. Now, in a few like outlying cases, like I got to mix one or two Dolly Parton songs where she sang vocals, and I was able to comp her vocal together. So she did 3 beautiful vocal takes, and I was able to go through and comp her vocal. And I came up with a good vocal. I was really honored that I would get to do it because the producer sent it to me and he said, here's 3 vocal takes. Dig out the ones that you like the most and then, and mix it. So I did. And then when I went to tune her vocal, instead of like just throwing the tuner across there, I was like, there's nothing wrong with this vocal at all. I mean, and I think I even tried tuning it a little bit, and listening to it, I remember that I didn't like her performance as much when I was finished. So I turned the tuner off, and any the minute pitches, same thing. And that happened. I mean, and I'm not saying this is the only case. Please don't take this to heart if I've ever mixed your vocal or whatever. But there was one other vocal that I did, and it was Jason Crabb, and I did a record with him, or 2 songs with him, with Wayne Hahn, several years ago. And I, there was a couple of little feely things that were like, oh, that's so good. I wonder what it would sound like if it was just a little sharper, a little flatter. And I did it, and I didn't like it as much, so I took it completely off. So the stuff that you hear that I've mixed of his, there was no processing on it at all. It was just his vocal, and he did it great. So I said all that to say that not everybody needs it, but you need to have the skill. Outside of those 2 people, most everybody else that I've mixed has had some amount of tuning and tweaking to the vocal. And it was so that you could hear the performance and feel it a little bit better and not be distracted by one note in a whole 3-minute song that they may have done in one take that was a little flat or sharp. So you need to know the skill, and you will get more ROI out of being able to edit a vocal than you will being able to record it through your nice, expensive stuff. Okay. So like I said, and luckily we don't have to choose between the 2 because we have both. I'm just telling you where my priority lies. Right. So first of all, tuning vocals is good because it's what people expect. They're tuned to being able to hear those little nuances, and the ones that are bad, or not bad, but the ones that slip through, they need to be strategic, right? And people need to know that they're strategic. So, or they don't need to know you tune the vocal. So you don't want anybody asking, "Hey, who tuned your vocal?" Because it's not good on either side. And also, the biggest ROI you're going to get if you had to choose between expensive microphones and signal path, choose being able to edit their vocal as being highly, highly important. Okay. Third and the final reason, not the final reason, but the final reason I have listed today, and then I'll take some questions about tuning, okay? It just makes you a better mixer. I can't tell you the amount of times. Yeah, I couldn't tell you the amount of times that when I'm mixing a song and something is bothering somebody, it's not, I mean, they'll say that it's too loud, but what they mean sometimes, if you listen with the right ears, and that's, one of the reasons that I'm passionate about this whole teaching thing, is because I want you to ask the right questions, right? I've had it happen before where people would say that note is just too loud. And I'm like, the note is not too loud. What, I'm thinking this in my head. What is it that's bothering them about it? You know what? It could be that it's pitchy. And then sometimes I'll track it into a tuner, and just that one phrase. And you don't have to tune every note for note. Sometimes you just have to go in and grab the phrase that's bothering people, right? And I've done that a lot. Then I'll grab the note and I'll go, yeah, he drifted a little bit flat toward the end. Could that be what's bothering him? So what I'll do, and I'll cover this a little later. I'll tell you about this a little later. I'll put my headphones on, turn the monitors down, and I'll tweak it up. And then I'll fix the note that may be drifting off, or maybe it's a little sharp, or maybe it started flat and got up on key. It doesn't matter. But when you track it into Melodyne, which I think is the best way to do it, you'll see these things and you'll see that, oh yeah, that maybe that's what's bothering him. So then I will tweak the note, turn the monitors back up, take my headphones off and say, hey, what do you think about this? And I'll play it back. And 9 times out of 10, it's like, that's it. What did you do? I didn't re-EQ anything. I didn't recompress anything. I didn't even ride the vocal volume wise. I fixed a pitch, but they were telling me that it was too loud, right? So you have to be able to ask the question behind the question. So when you're mixing like this, it is so easy to go into this big tail chase where you're chasing your tail and you're actually making your product worse. Let's say you were 99.9% right on the mix and they should have liked it. And then they go back and they say that one note is too loud. And you heard that as that one note is too loud, or maybe the drums were too loud, or maybe the vocals were too loud. And you chase that as being, well, they know what they're talking about. It's too loud. And you pulled it down. Then you started this thing, well, now the drums are too loud, or now this. And you started this crumbling effect of your mix that you have worked so hard on it because you didn't ask the right question behind the question they were asking, right? Or you at least didn't have a checklist of things that you should try first before you just blatantly go and do what they ask you to do. Because sometimes even the best singers, the best technical people, they still don't ask the right questions. Sometimes they will perceive, and if you've heard me teach at all, you'll know that they'll say something is too loud when it's ahead of the beat. And your ear hears the attack principle, right? What you hear first, you perceive as being loud. And I've done it before when I was mixing banjo. I slid a banjo back right on the downbeat, and he was saying it wasn't loud enough. But when I slipped it ahead where he played it, it was suddenly loud enough. I didn't change the volume at all. It was the fact that he was hearing it at the right time. So being able to tune a vocal well, it just makes you a better mixer and it makes you a better producer. Bottom line, when you can ask the right question and find out what's actually bothering your people, or you even, when you can actually find out what's actually bothering people and you can fix that problem, you're a surgeon. You just fixed what they were asking before they got the question out of their mouth, right? So being able to do this sort of things, like putting things in the pocket and putting things on pitch, it just makes you better. It makes you a better producer. And so for those reasons, I say that tuning a vocal is probably one of the it's got to be one of the top skills there is, especially if people depend on you for vocals, for recording their vocals, because there's another couple of things that I'll teach in an upcoming course. There's a thing called momentum that you have to create in the studio, whether it be when you're doing it yourself with your band, or if a client has come to you to get you to capture their vocals. There's a thing called momentum that has to happen in a session, or people will get frustrated, or worse yet, you'll get a good vocal, but people won't feel good about it, right? And their experience, like I've talked to several people before that I would say, oh man, that record was so great. What was it like working with this producer? And they said, it was miserable. I will never do it again. I've had actually people to tell me that before, that worked with these like producers that if I mentioned their name, you would go, oh man, his stuff is great. But I talked to the person who just worked with them and they said, I will never do that again. It was miserable. And you have to ask, I'm asking the question behind the question, what made it miserable? And they said, basically what I summarize it to be, or break it down to be, is that there was no momentum created in the studio. Every time they felt like they were getting somewhere, it's like, oh, got to do it again. And I've got to unearth all that emotion to get that take one more time, because they didn't like the way the mic sounded on my vocal, or they didn't like one note that I sang. I mean, momentum has to be created in the studio. So these are ways that you can create momentum. Take that first vocal pass that's maybe not great, and come back to it if you think it can be better as momentum is created. I'm telling you, if you don't hear a perfect vocal, but it doesn't sound too perfect, but it sounds believable, then that's what people are expecting these days, because that's what they're getting in all the radio singles, right? Also, you'll get more ROI from tuning than you will expensive microphones. I'm not saying that you can't have both, because most of you do. And third, it just makes you better. It makes you better producer, because you make better calls on which vocal takes you should keep. Because if you just felt that when you're like, oh man, I got chills on my arm when I felt that. Don't go over it, for crying out loud. Tune it if it was not perfect. Okay. Okay. So let's go back and grab some questions. Let's see. Should we clip gain the WAV file before we Melodyne? It depends, Mark. I would say if you, and again, I'm talking about momentum here too. If it's not going to decrease your momentum, then, and it's going to help you to do it better, then yeah. There is one thing I would definitely do before you track something into Melodyne. Now, I'm just talking about, there's a lot of plugins, or there's several plugins, Waves Tune Real Time and Auto Tune, and Antares Auto Tune. And I haven't tried some of the other ones, like the Nectar from Ozone. I'd like to, but there are some like real time vocal tuning things. Those are a different animal, because you know, those will do it in real time, and sometimes I do both, and I'll explain that a little later too. So should you clip gain? Not necessarily. I mean, if you see something that's blatantly obvious, and you can, like, you have shortcuts like I do that just like clip it down a little bit and then track it in, yes. But I'll tell you what is more important, what you absolutely should do, and that is to make sure that your edits are good. So if you've just comped a vocal and you've got like cuts in the middle of a breath, you can't undo those in Melodyne. Melodyne does not do a good job of fixing those things. You can't fix those things. The only thing you can do is take them out. But there again, all right, like when you just heard me breathe, you expect to hear that, and you've tuned out already. But if you didn't hear me breathe and you just heard me talk from front to back with no breaths, your ears would say, I don't know about that. It's something weird about his vocal. So if you try to do that in Melodyne and you just take out all the breaths, your ears are going to say, my flag just went up. There's something weird with this vocal. So you should absolutely crossfade all your stuff, or better yet, move your edits to the point where it's a natural place to take a breath. Like if they took 2 breaths, usually they're going to take a breath at the end of something to go to the next phrase, and they're going to take a breath before the phrase. And if you do that right there, and you cut in the middle of the breath between the 2 breaths, you're going to hear it. It's an easy thing. Slide it to the right to where you're using the previous breath, or you slide it to the left, or using the breath that's prior to the take you're keeping. You should absolutely have those. And if there's no way around it, then you can clip gain that down, or whatever. But you should absolutely do that. So great question, Mark. I need help mixing vocals so bad. Jeffrey, man, I'd love to help you. Why don't you reach out to me a little later today, Kevin at mixcoach.com, and let me see what we can do. Okay. Mr. Person, I wonder if that's your real name, because it seems like such a great anonymous name, but I don't know. It could be your real name. Hey, I'm a huge fan. Thank you. And need help. My max mix voice is G#5, and male lowest is C2. But the problem is that after I'm doing E5, it feels like I'm dragging so much and tensing. I only sang 1 month. Will my voice get stronger? Hey, you know what? I will admit this, and I'm just being honest here. I am not a technically, I know when a vocal is sung well, and I know when somebody has proper breath support. I would recommend that you hire a vocal coach for lessons, because I don't think a problem like this would take too long to correct. As a matter of fact, reach out to Mark Jacoby. Mark knows a lot about breath support, vocals, things like that. He can help you there, Mr. Person. But I think will your voice get stronger? Yes, it will get stronger if you don't do the wrong things, because I've worked with vocalists for most of my life now. And the thing I have noticed is that if you don't sing it right, if you don't warm up right, if you're talking, speaking, singing wrong, you can come up with these things called vocal nodules, and they are a beast to deal with sometimes because they will take away your voice temporarily, sometimes permanently, if you just disregard everything. So what I would do with you, is yes, your vocal will get better if you do the right things. There's a couple of resources, it's leaving me right now. Mark Jacoby would be a good source to know. But I had a friend in San Francisco, and I recommended a vocal coach to him that was in Nashville. His name is Brett. Somebody help me if you remember who I'm talking about. He was a judge on the country version of American Idol. His name is Brett something, and he's a vocal coach, and he's got resources, and they were able to show you how to warm up and everything. So don't mess around with that. If you're getting tired or whatever, or you're tensing, there's ways around that. So let's see. I'll pop this question up here. Should you tune all vocals or only what you perceive as flawed performances? And if only a few need tuning, what percentage do you think that is? That's a great question, Steve. And that is honestly a case-by-case thing for me. I don't say all vocals need to be tuned all the time. Sometimes what I'll do is I will throw an auto tune across the channel and let that do the lion's share of the tuning. So if I'm trying to answer your question succinctly, I would say in 90% of the cases, the vocal is tuned, but not always by Melodyne. A lot of times, what I'll do is in the first slot I'll put Melodyne. The second slot I'll put auto tune or waves tune. I have a preference over the two. But that's what I'll do. And what I'll do is I'll leave Melodyne open, nothing going through it. It's just passing signal. Nothing's been tracked into it yet, nothing like that. But then the next plugin is called Auto Tune, and it is tuning everything. Now, when I hear a note that's like, that's weird, the tuner grabbed that, right? How many singers have said that to you? The tuner grabbed that, and it does it wrong. Then what I usually do is track that phrase into Melodyne. And I'll tune that, and that way the tuner, you can bypass the tuner at that point, or really just let the tuner work because it's not doing anything to the signal that's audible, at least to me. As far as percentages, so I would say that most all vocals probably need to be tuned somewhat. They don't all need to be gone over like note by note, breath by breath. Most of them don't need that. Most of them just need a good dose of like auto tune or waves tune real time. And as far as tuning, and if only a few need tuning, what percentage do you think that is? I think I answered that. I'm not sure. Let me know, Steve, if I didn't. Randy Wild said, great advice when they say it's too loud. I can't emphasize that enough, that most people they're not nerds like us, and they don't know that the attack principle, and you're hearing that last is loudest and all that stuff that I teach. They don't know that there's a psychology involved in what you're hearing. So yeah, when they say it's too loud, most of the time, unless it's an experienced producer, you should at least question whether it's actually too loud, because you've spent hours with it and they're listening to it on the first pass. I'm not saying that they're wrong, because they're mostly right, but you should always ask, are they really too loud? Or is it that one, like the thing I talked about a few weeks ago, that one snare hit in a big, huge orchestral mix that I was mixing, one snare hit was too loud. And the arranger, or the producer, the guy that had years more experience than I did, said, turn the drums down, right? It was the snare that was too loud, not the drums, right? Brad, hey, bud. This is a difficult skill a lot of young engineers struggle to grasp, deciphering what your client is actually saying. Correct. I mean, I think, let's admit it, Brad, you've worked with a lot of people before, and nobody likes a know-it-all, right? And I'm not saying that you should say, you should definitely not say what you're trying to say is, don't ever say that, because you're kind of perceived as cocky then, and you don't want you. I mean, people want. You remember what I said about people remembering the experience they had in the studio long after they will. If I didn't mention it, I have mentioned it before. People will remember how they felt in the studio and what you were joking about, the funny stuff that happened, where you went to lunch, how they felt when they were singing, how they sounded in the headphones. They'll remember that a lot longer than whether the record was a number one record, right? Like the guy I talked to that had just worked with a super producer, and he was saying, I'll never do it again. It was a great record, great record. But anyway, this is fantastic advice. More people need to use this approach. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Okay, so back to Mr. Person. Chris Lepe, is that how you say it, Mark? Is the best online today. So, hey, Mark, drop a link to his channel, if you would, in the chat, and maybe that'll help Mr. Person out, okay? Brett Manning, that's him. That's the guy, Isaac Morano. Thank you, man. Brett Manning is, I had a friend that recorded a lot of his early tutorial stuff, and I got to hear a lot of it, and it's awesome stuff. And it's stuff I'll know that if they've had Brett Manning warm ups by the way they warm up, because they'll do the lip thing, and then they'll hold their lip up this way, and they'll moo 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 moo. And I'll tell you, I've done it before too. Like right now, my throat is sore. My mouth is getting tired, and I know that I'm probably not talking right. And if I would warm up and consider this a performance, I probably last a lot longer. But anyway, yeah, Brett Manning is the guy. And Mark says that Chris Lepe. So I would say, Mr. Man, between those two, you've got what you need right there to kind of warm up your vocals, and make sure you don't blow it out. Okay. Let's see. That sounds like a great method for judging tuning in a vocal. Okay, cool. I'm glad it answered your question. Okay, so I've already told you that my voice is getting tired. You can hear it getting raspy. So maybe I should check out some Brett Manning videos, warm my vocal up. But anyway, okay. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. Now I want to tell you, I am going to do this. I don't have it completely set up yet, but I'm going to do a masterclass on tuning vocals at the end of this week or the beginning of next week. So I'll be sending out an email, and I'll be putting the link in this video, and I'm going to break down what I do. And I've had people that have said that they've been tuning vocals for years, and they've never approached tuning a vocal the way I do. Now, I don't know if that's bad or if that's good, but I do know this. I can tune a vocal pretty quick, and I spend that 80-20 on the right stuff, I believe, to get a vocal right. Because this past weekend, and like I said, and I'm not outing anybody here, because I tune every vocal that I mix, I at least look at it through the lens of like performance-wise. But we did a vocal this weekend on a video, and of the 3 vocals that I mixed this weekend personally, they were all cut. 2 of them were cut on an iPhone. So your little iPhone is pretty good mic, depending on your acoustics, how far you are from it, and whether you distort or not. But I would challenge you to say that was an iPhone vocal, except for the bird singing in the background, maybe, or the dogs barking because she was in the woods. Nobody said, "Oh, it sounds like an iPhone." They loved her performance, and part of that performance was the way she sang it, the way she emoted the lyric, and I helped a little bit with a little tweaky stuff. Nothing big at all, but it was all done in Melodyne. So I want to show you guys exactly what I do. So be on the lookout on this one. And also, if you're not on my list of people that I contact occasionally about trainings like this, then you should do it. Just go to mixcoach.com. There's a free resource for you. If you don't already have it, you don't have to look at it, but click on that link, put your email in there, and I will let you know when this is coming up, but it's coming up this week. And the thing is, I think I'm going to be doing it live in real time, just like this, answering questions as I go. I'm going to show you what you need to be looking for, the way you can chop up a vocal to where you can double click and it's 99% done. All right. I'm going to show you my whole workflow. So, yeah, is that excitement, Mark? I hope so, because I'm really looking forward to doing this. One more question, and then I'll call it a day. Be on the lookout for this, and also in my email. Do you track as though you're not going to use pitch correction? In other words, punch in and fix bad notes while tracking. I do sometimes, but I always measure it with performance. If I actually think that they can do it better, if they, did the certain thing, then absolutely I will get them to do it. I try to never say fix it in the mix, ever. Because you say that, once you say it once, it's like it's an addiction that you start to do just to create momentum, and it's the wrong way to create momentum. If I think they can do it again better, I will get them to do it again. And I'll show you in this course what I do. I never make it. I hardly ever punch in anymore, and I comp vocals, and I'll show you how I do that. Also, Tony, if you're interested, I usually get 3 vocal takes, and I'll pick the best of the best. Creates momentum for them, creates more choices for me. It allows me to not, well, the momentum that it creates is worth 90% of doing it this way. And I'll show you how I comp the vocal together, and also how I get the best performance. And then I'll go back and listen. And then if there's something that they could do better, it's obvious. It's very obvious. And then I go back and I'll do that little process again, except for only one line. So hopefully that helped, Tony. I want to be helpful. So anyway, go to mixcoach.com. If you're not on the list, you don't have that pre-resource about the things that I do to when I mix. And then by the end of this week, beginning of next week at the latest, there's going to be a online masterclass I want you guys to be a part of. Okay. I'm going to go have some coffee, rest my voice, and get busy on this course. Okay. So I'm not streaming tomorrow. I'm going to be working on this course. But I will see you Wednesday. I'll be doing another live stream on Wednesday. Okay, probably talking about vocals again. All right. So I hope you guys have a wonderful class. Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me, Mark. There is a masterclass this weekend with Liz Shaw, and thanks for reminding me about that, Mark. If you go to this link here, you can actually. I won't even mention it because I think it expired already. But there's a masterclass with Lidge. Let me try this link real quick and I'll show it to you. mixcoach.com/LIJ. I can get my typewriter to work. My typewriter. Oh man, I just showed my age, right? If you go to this, let me share this page real quick with you on StreamYard because I want you to see. There. Okay, this is the dude that's going to be on there. His name is Craig Alvin. He's done some amazing stuff. And basically he's going to be all day this coming Saturday. He's going to be teaching how to mix. And I want to be a part of that. And I would love for some of you guys to come. 4 days, 23 hours, 20 minutes, 34 seconds. He's going to be doing a step-by-step a process for how he mixes stuff. And dude, he just won the Grammy, a recording Grammy, not just a Grammy that he was a part of, but he actually recorded it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he mixed it on his little workstation like this right here and not in a big studio. So you guys go to mixcoach.com/LIJ. That's for Lid Shaw. And hey, look at here. Hey, guys, do it right now, seriously, because this stuff right here is going away today. And Lid shows you how he does vocal comping, which I learned a little bit from there. I don't do it this way, but I learned, and I'm going to be implementing it. Number 2, a pro vocal mix vocal tuning. He shows it. Now he shows it in a way where he does it in Melodyne. as an external plugin. I don't do it that way. I'm going to show you how to do it slightly different. And also, I wanted to mention too, if you sign up on this page and you get this stuff today, be sure and let me know, because I'm going to send you something that will complement this, kind of my approach of doing it too. Okay, so LIJ, go check it out. It's going to be a masterclass with Craig Alvin. Okay, I'm looking forward to it. All right, I may not be there all day, but I'm going to definitely be there some of the day. So we'll say hi in the chat. Okay. Okay, now I am going to end the broadcast, and hopefully, let me put this link. I'm going to put the link in the comments so that you guys can mixcoach.com/LIJ, and you can check it out. All right, so check that out, and maybe I'll see you Saturday. I'll definitely see you Wednesday, and until then, have a great week. Okay, see you soon, everybody. Bye.